Thank you very much. Just as a follow-up to the course of questioning, I can't forget the image of seeing the one lone house that remained standing during Hurricane Ike in Galveston, only to think, how did it survive all out there alone? To find later that the entire neighborhood was devastated and that house survived. And it was because they had used the type of materials that would resist many winds. How do we, I just heard your comments from the standpoint of encouraging architects and all, but it seems to me that local ordinances, when permission is gotten for building, has to be involved. How do we do that without making it seem that this is big government trying to boss everybody? But I should think that insurance companies should be very interested in having resilience in the building, as well as governments. We've, you know, with the ability of our satellite system to predict, we've gone a long ways in saving lives, but we haven't done nearly as well in saving property. And that is a major concern in an economy like today. How do you see that responsibility fitting where, and what can we do?
Okay. Representative Johnson, one thing I would tell you about that one building that you saw in Ike, I saw one building or one neighborhood in Moore, Oklahoma that had hurricane ties, something that actually would hold the roof down to the wall. Just one out of thousands and thousands that we looked at. Essentially, we have to do a better argument to convince individuals, as Ms. Ballen said, that this is something that they ought to think about instead of that granite countertop. Let's look back at ourselves 100 years ago. Our large cities, Chicago, New York, San Francisco, we all faced a fire considerations. Blocks and blocks were burning down. It was at that time that those city leaders, legislators, politicians, and the public got together and said, enough is enough. If Chicago is going to survive, we're going to have to, you know, all pull in one direction, and that's what we did. And we can do it again. We have the ability to do it again. I think right now the public is generally fearful of tornadoes, fearful of the wind hazard, and they believe we don't have the talent to do it. I think we've put a man on the moon. We could pretty much keep a roof on a house.
Thank you.
I certainly agree with that statement. We are very strong supporters of building codes, and about a year ago, we did a little study. We called it Rating the States, and we looked at the building code regimes from Texas to Maine in the hurricane-prone, the coastal states, on a 0 to 100 scale. The scores ranged from 4 to 95. So there was quite a range. And I will tell you that as a public communications vehicle, a lot of people may not know what a building code is, but they know that it's good to have a high score and it's bad to have a low score. And that really has started a dialogue. And the most positive responses that we've gotten from the media certainly have been in those states with the low scores about how they can do better. One state that was not at the bottom was in the middle, but actually passed a bill this year, Maryland, that specifically addressed an issue that we had identified in those states. So it's a way of making building codes understandable to people. So again, they begin to demand that they want to be, we would say ideally in a state. We support statewide mandatory building codes. It's much easier for enforcement. It's much more consistent. But there are some states where that hasn't happened, and Texas certainly is one of them. At a minimum, at the local level, there ought to be strong ordinances in effect.
Any other witness comment? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.